Imagine a man walking into a courtroom as if it were his personal red carpet, and a single look from the judge wipes every trace of that star-struck confidence from his face. The hum of quiet conversations falters when he steps through the door. Not because anyone fears him, but because nothing about this moment fits. A minor parking citation shouldn't feel like a movie premiere. Yet Heirvin is, moving with a slow, curated swagger, chin lifted just enough to imply he expects recognition. His clothes look casual, but in that intentional way that takes 3 assistants to get effortlessly right. Even his hair seems rehearsed. He pauses, scanning the room for cameras, lips tugging into a half-smile when he finds none. So he creates one. His phone lifts, screen glowing. He taps record, angling it to catch the whole courtroom as if he's shooting a behind-the-scenes clip. He doesn't hide it. On the contrary, he wants everyone to see he's documenting the moment, performing it. A whisper of irritation ripples across the benches. His case? A parking violation. Nothing more substantial than a ticket for stopping in a veterans-only zone. But he says it with a shrug, almost laughing. I was told the rules aren't that strict here, small town and all that. It lands poorly. No boos, no complaints, just that tight, disbelieving silence older Americans give when something feels deeply disrespectful. The judge begins with routine questions, voice steady and neutral. Then his brow narrows slightly as he reads the officer's comments. A small notation sits beneath the citation, one the young man clearly hoped no one would notice. Attempted obstruction of ambulance access. The air contracts. He chuckles. Too sharp, too quick. Seriously? That's exaggerated. But nobody laughs with him. Eyes shift toward him, not hostile, but heavy. A collective pressure he wasn't ready for. The purposeful grin dulls at the edges. His shoulders stiffen. The phone lowers a fraction, though he tries to disguise it as a stylistic camera move. He expected amusement, maybe admiration. Instead, he gets a room full of people wondering how anyone could treat a courtroom like a stage. And for the first time since he walked in, a small falter flickers across his expression. The slightest crack in a polished performance he thought would carry him through this with ease. He shifts his weight as the judge studies him, and for a moment his posture collapses just a little, enough to expose the truth beneath the stylish confidence. The judge asks who he is, and the answer lands heavier in the room than he expects. He is the only son of a man America once treated like family, an actor whose roles shaped generations, a face associated with decency, patriotic integrity, and the kind of dependable goodness people trusted. But the young man standing here isn't his father's reflection. He is the byproduct of years spent orbiting fame without ever earning gravity of his own. I grew up with everything handled for me, he admits, trying to sound unaffected. So I didn't think I needed help for something this minor. The words come off wrong, not arrogant exactly, but strangely innocent in a way that feels out of place for a grown adult. The judge tilts his head, recognizing it. Why is he here alone? Why no attorney? That answer is where the first real tremor appears. He explains that a major studio has been considering him for a supporting role, his first real shot. But he's been warned to avoid any bad press after a series of embarrassing incidents in the past year. Paparazzi scuffles, reckless driving claims that never reach court, rumors of late-night scraps outside private clubs. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make a casting department hesitate. So he came by himself today, hoping to show the world, or at least his phone, that he could handle things maturely. The camera was his safety blanket, his silent witness. If he looked composed enough in the footage, maybe the studio would believe he had changed. But the cracks start spreading fast. While explaining why he didn't see the veterans-only sign, he stumbles. I wasn't paying attention because I didn't notice it, he says. Then, moments later, I checked the mirror because the meeting was on my phone, and I was trying to keep an eye on it while pulling in. The statements can't coexist. The judge notices. So does the room. A subtle tightening occurs around his eyes, the look of someone realizing he's contradicted himself, but too late to pull the words back. And then a new presence makes everything suddenly personal. A gray-haired veteran, seated quietly among the observers, shifts forward slightly. His movements are slow, deliberate, hinting at past injuries rather than impatience. He isn't glaring. He's simply watching the young man with the kind of calm disappointment that stings more than anger ever could, because he was the one forced to detour around the illegally parked car that day. The defendant sees him, really sees him, and something in his posture falters again. His fingers tap the side of his phone, but the screen no longer holds his attention. His gaze keeps drifting toward the judge instead, as though searching for an anchor he didn't realize he needed. There are no theatrics now, no clever remarks, only the slow unraveling of a persona built for an audience that, in this room, no longer exists. He straightens, trying to regain the confidence he walked in with. But the aura has changed. His bravado is no longer a shield. It's a thin veil stretched over the unmistakable tremor of someone who has suddenly, painfully discovered he isn't in control of the narrative. Not here. Not today. The judge leans back slightly, folding his hands, and the room seems to tighten around that modest shift of posture. His voice remains even, but the question he asks carries a weight the young man didn't anticipate. You're already filming, so let's be thorough. Would you show the court the full video you recorded when you arrived? The defendant blinks, too slowly. His grip on the phone adjusts, thumb hovering near the screen as if searching for an escape hatch. I didn't save everything, he mutters. Just parts. Parts of what? The judge asks. Your arrival? Your parking? Or the performance you plan to share later? A faint tremor crosses the young man's jaw. For the first time, his silence isn't a pose. It's an admission he can't polish. The judge doesn't push. Instead, he lifts a police report, turning it outward just enough for the courtroom to see a grainy photo. The defendant's vehicle angled across a ramp leading to the building's accessible entrance. Not merely a parking spot, a designated path for stretchers and wheelchairs. An obstruction that forced emergency responders to maneuver around him. A breathless pause blankets the room. This isn't simply a veteran's space, the judge says. Your car blocked a medical access point. The ambulance that arrived needed to reverse and circle the lot. The defendant's face drains a shade. I didn't realize... Before he can finish, the veteran slowly raises a hand. The judge nods, granting permission. The older man's voice is steady, but not harsh. I was there. I saw you. You were on video chat, holding your phone high, smiling at someone. You weren't looking at the pavement. You didn't check the markers. You had time to take a few, takes. A faint ripple of restrained disbelief spreads around the benches. The young man shakes his head too quickly. I wasn't making a video like that. But his tone betrays him. The words come out thin, edges frayed with panic he tries to swallow. The judge lifts the still image once more. Your mirror caught more than you intended, he says calmly. The reflection shows you adjusting your phone before stepping out. You framed yourself carefully, which contradicts your claim of being rushed. A shock wave of realization flickers through the defendant's eyes, the kind that follows a person understanding they've walked themselves into a corner. His fingers loosen around the phone. The screen dims as if retreating with him. The room holds its breath, not because the judge has raised his voice. He hasn't. It's the opposite. The quiet, measured unraveling of the young man's story feels far more devastating than any reprimand. His shoulders slope inward. His practiced posture dissolves. He's no longer posing for a non-existent audience. He's fighting to keep a version of events alive that even he no longer fully believes. The tension thickens. Not dramatic, not theatrical, but honest. The kind of tension that comes when truth and pretense collide, and pretense starts losing ground. A bead of sweat forms near his temple. He doesn't wipe it away. His voice, when it finally emerges, is barely above a whisper. I didn't think it mattered. But in this room, with the veteran watching, with the judge's steady gaze anchored on facts he can't dodge, it matters more than anything he expected when he walked in, phone raised like a spotlight only he could see. The judge sets the photo aside with deliberate care, as though marking a threshold in the hearing. When he speaks again, his tone remains steady, but something in it sharpens, not harshness, but precision. This is no longer about a parking mistake, he says. This is about the choices you made while other people depended on clear access. The defendant nods quickly, too quickly, as if agreement alone might undo the weight of evidence. But the judge isn't finished. He reaches for a thin folder the clerk hadn't touched earlier, an unassuming document with a clipped corner. There is one more detail we need to address. The young man straightens, apprehension flickering in his eyes. He wasn't expecting anything else. This record includes an anonymous call placed to dispatch the same afternoon, the judge continues. A witness reported that you were at it again, their words, staging some sort of spectacle behind the wheel. A low murmur sweeps through the room. The defendant's lips part, confusion pulling his expression taut. I didn't know anyone filed a report, he says, voice wavering. I thought it was just gossip. It wasn't gossip, the judge replies. It was documented, time-stamped, and attached to your file. A shift ripples through the courtroom, the feeling of context rewriting itself. This wasn't an isolated lapse. It was part of a pattern, one smoothed over by people who had the resources to make small scandals vanish before they reached daylight. The young man's shoulders sag as an unguarded truth breaks through his practiced defenses. I came alone today because I didn't want to hide behind my dad again, he says. Every time something went wrong, someone fixed it for me. I needed to prove I could handle one thing on my own. The admission doesn't land triumphantly. It lands with the weight of someone who realizes he has walked into the deepest hole he has ever dug. From the gallery, the veteran shifts forward once more. His voice, when he speaks, is softer than before. Son, you keep talking about proving yourself, but you didn't think about the people around you. That's the part that hurts. The defendant swallows, his throat tightening. For a heartbeat, his face contorts, not with anger, but with a dawning understanding of the moral landscape he'd ignored. He exhales shakily. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I needed something to show my father, something that said I could stand on my own. A quiet realization settles over the room. The phone he filmed with wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for one man, a father whose approval he still couldn't earn. The judge watches him carefully, the gears of comprehension turning behind his calm demeanor. You were performing, he says gently. Not for strangers online, for someone whose expectations overshadow you. The words hit harder than any accusation. The defendant drops his gaze, fingers tightening around the phone he no longer dares to lift. The veteran nods slowly, not with condemnation, but with a kind of solemn empathy. Wanting to be seen, he murmurs, isn't wrong. Forgetting who else is in the room. That's where you stumbled. The judge lets the silence deepen, letting every person present feel the gravity of the moment. Not a courtroom spectacle, not a celebrity's misstep, a young man stripped of excuses, left face to face with the truth he spent years dodging. And for the first time since he entered, he isn't posing. He isn't posturing. He is simply standing there, frightened, exposed, and no longer certain of the story he intended to tell. The judge lets the silence settle until every restless shift in the benches stops. When he finally speaks, his voice carries none of the edge the defendant braced for. Instead, it carries something far more disarming. "I don't see a villain in front of me," he says quietly. "I see someone who's been taught to live inside a role instead of inside his own life." The words drift through the courtroom like a slow chord, unexpected in their gentleness. The defendant blinks, caught off guard. He had prepared himself for condemnation, for a verbal hammer. Not this. The judge continues, his tone measured, not soft but honest. Being raised in a famous family doesn't grant immunity from responsibility, and it certainly doesn't excuse overlooking the needs of people who served this country. What you did wasn't malicious, but it was careless, and carelessness has consequences. A woman in the back row nods faintly. The veteran sits straighter, listening with the intensity of someone who has heard too many apologies and not enough accountability. The judge folds his hands. "I can't punish you for growing up in someone else's shadow, but I can hold you accountable for the moment you forced an ambulance crew to reroute. That choice belongs entirely to you." The defendant's chest rises with a shaky breath. His eyes shine, not with tears, but with a stunned realization that someone has finally named the truth without scorn. For the first time today, he speaks without performance, without the practiced cadence of someone used to being observed. "I never thought about the people around me," he says. "I was so focused on looking like I was in control. I didn't think anyone saw me unless I was filming." The admission lands with a palpable shift. It does not sound like manipulation. It sounds like a young man discovering the boundaries of his own blindness. A few spectators exchange glances, not pity, not approval, but recognition. Everyone in the room has known someone who mistook attention for identity. The judge leans forward. "Then, let's give you a chance to be seen for the right reasons." He reaches for the paperwork, scans it once more, and sets it down with a decisive tap. "I'm reducing the financial penalties," he says, "but only because money won't teach you what you need to learn. Instead, you will spend 40 hours volunteering at the local Veterans Center. You'll listen more than you speak, you'll hear their stories, and maybe understand something about service and sacrifice." The young man nods slowly, absorbing each word like a weight placed deliberately into his hands. "In addition," the judge continues, "you will submit a written reflection, not for this court, but for the people whose trust you hope to earn. Your father, the studio, yourself." A low, steady exhale escapes him. Not relief, but awareness. This is not the punishment he expected. It is the responsibility he never imagined he'd be asked to take on. The veteran watches him carefully. Not triumphant, not vindictive, simply present. The judge adds, "This isn't meant to burden you. It's meant to redirect you. Some people need a harsh sentence. Others need an honest moment." The defendant lowers his head, and when he lifts it again, something essential has shifted. His gaze no longer darts toward his phone. It lands on the judge and stays there, grounded, unguarded. The courtroom releases a collective breath. A few observers exchange quiet murmurs, sensing the magnitude of what just unfolded. Not spectacle, not humiliation, transformation, or the first fragile step toward it. But the defendant doesn't smile. He doesn't show gratitude or relief. Instead, his expression holds a new, unfamiliar stillness, the awareness that he is standing at the edge of a life he's never lived before. And for the first time all morning, he isn't trying to perform it. He's simply trying to understand it. The judge's ruling still hangs in the air when the clerk begins gathering papers, signaling the hearing is nearing its end. Yet no one moves. The defendant stays rooted in place, shoulders lowered, as if a weight he never named has finally settled where he can feel it. The judge prepares to close the file, but pauses. He notices the young man leaning forward slightly, lips parting with a hesitation absent earlier. "Your Honor, may I say something?" The request is quiet, unpolished. The judge nods. The defendant inhales deeply, the kind of breath someone takes before stepping into cold water. "I don't know if I can change," he admits. No drama, no trembling voice, just truth, stripped of its armor. "But today, for the first time, I'm ashamed in a way that isn't about my career or my dad. I'm ashamed because of the person I've been when no one was watching." The room goes still, not tense, reverent, as though everyone recognizes the difference between rehearsed remorse and the raw, unplanned kind that slips through when a person finally faces himself. The judge studies him for a long moment, then offers a single approving nod. He doesn't praise him, he doesn't congratulate him. He simply acknowledges the courage in that admission. The case is concluded. But the story isn't. When the young man steps into the hallway, the air feels strangely colder. Or maybe just clearer. He turns instinctively toward the pocket where his phone rests, a habit formed from years of documenting, curating, hiding behind lenses. This time, his hand stops halfway. The veteran, waiting by the wall, walks toward him. His gait is slow but steady, anchored by experience. He stops a foot away. "I'm not here to scold you," he says. "I'm here because you look like someone standing at the start of a road he never planned to walk." The defendant drops his gaze. "I don't know where that road leads." "That's the point." The veteran extends his hand. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to grow." The offer hovers between them. Not forgiveness, not friendship. Something harder. A challenge. The young man hesitates. A long heartbeat passes. Then he takes the hand. It's not a triumphant handshake. It's awkward, uncertain, but sincere. A first step. Behind them, the courtroom door opens briefly as the judge exits. He sees the handshake, the two figures standing together, one seasoned by service, one humbled into possibility. The judge gives a small, thoughtful smile and murmurs to himself, just loud enough for the moment to take root. Some people are saved by the law, others by honesty. Today, honesty won. The door closes with a soft click. Sunlight spills through the courthouse windows as the young man walks toward the exit. His phone stays in his pocket, silent, untouched. No recording, no performance. He pushes the doors open and steps outside without crafting a scene, without arranging his posture, without thinking about who might be watching. It's just him. A beginning instead of an ending. A life he will now have to live without a script.